On Thursday, the 11th of September, just last month, a 20-year-old university student named Jade McKissic was last seen in Houston after a night out with friends, when all of a sudden, she would mysteriously vanish without a trace. Family members and classmates expected to hear from her soon, but the messages went unanswered, and days soon passed, with campus anxiety surging as students organised search efforts and held vigils, refusing to believe Jade could simply disappear. But then, just 4 days later, on the morning of September 15th, the little hope that remained collapsed, when a body was discovered in Jade Bayou near Spur 5, and after inspection, it was revealed by the authorities that the body belonged to Jade. Officials stated that there were no signs of foul play. However, to this day, no clear explanation has been made public, despite the fact that a young, healthy woman surrounded by friends with her entire future ahead of her ended up deceased in one of Houston's bayous. But to make matters even worse, her death is just one of a growing number of mysterious recoveries from Houston's waterways this year alone, which authorities continue to insist are not connected, despite mounting public concern and unanswered questions. So, given these extremely concerning circumstances, it is no surprise that an entire city has been left wondering, what really happened to Jade McKissic? And could Houston be home to an active serial killer? Jade Elise McKissic, also known as Sage by her close friends, was born in the early 2000s in the greater Houston area, where she was raised alongside a close-knit family. From childhood, those who knew her described Jade as caring, reliable, and always quick to lend a hand to the people she held dear. She attended local schools in the Houston region, graduating from Spring High School, where she made lasting friendships and earned recognition for her leadership and creative talents. After high school, she moved on to the University of Houston, majoring in strategic communications and advertising, a program she embraced with enthusiasm and hope for the future. At university, Jade was deeply involved. She worked as a student employee, helped in orientation and campus tours, and even edited social media content for campus organizations. Friends say she was good at everything, from writing and photography all the way to dance and acting, someone who seemed to bring light and energy to every space she entered. In her daily life, Jade's warmth and authenticity stood out. One friend recalled how Jade's nickname, Sage, seemed fitting, as she was wise beyond her years, welcoming, and full of creative spirit. She had built a life with connection and the kind of momentum that young adults dream of. However, in a moment that would stun her entire community, Jade's story would take an abrupt and tragic turn when she would mysteriously disappear on that fateful day in September. On Thursday, the 11th of September, the 20-year-old student left the 3700 block of North McGregor Way around 1 AM after spending a fun evening out with her friends. At the time, she had just left a bar near the university campus called LA Burgers and Daiquiris, wearing a black tank top and black shorts. For reasons which are still unknown, she left behind her cell phone and headed out into the night, proceeding to walk alone toward Jade Bayou. According to witnesses, she was seen leaving a gas station near the Scott and McGregor intersection, where she bought a drink before continuing on foot towards the bayou. But this sighting would be the last time she would ever be seen, as shortly after this, she would disappear into the night, with her friends left wondering where she could have gone. As the days passed, concern continued to grow. For someone like Jade, who was always active and connected, the fact that she had failed to respond to any of her friends was alarming, to say the least. They began frantically texting and calling her cell phone, and classmates even conducted their own search around the residence halls, hoping she was just laying low. But to their dismay, no sign of Jade could be found on the university campus, leaving her friends with no choice but to contact her family to see if she had possibly returned home without telling anyone. However, Jade's family were equally as shocked to learn about her absence, as they too had been unable to get in touch with her for days, assuming she was just keeping busy at university. So, once they realised the dark reality of the situation, Jade's family and friends could no longer sit idly by while they waited for her to get in touch, eventually deciding to officially report their loved one as missing to the local police. On Sunday the 14th of September, around 3 days after Jade was last seen, the Houston Police Department would receive that harrowing call where they learned for the first time that Jade McKissic was missing, with her family believing strongly that she could have been in danger. By this point, the silence had grown unbearable, as Jade wasn't the type of person to just suddenly walk away from her life by choice. She was a bright and dependable presence on campus and someone who always checked in with those around her, so her unexpected absence felt completely out of character. During the official report, Jade's family explained that she had been out the previous night with friends and had not returned to her dormitory. Her phone went unanswered, text messages remained unread, and there were no social media updates, meaning that her usual routine of communication had completely stopped. They mentioned how friends had already retraced her steps and checked campus buildings, but despite their efforts, no sign of Jade was found. So, in response to their pleas for help, the Houston Police Department opened an investigation into the disappearance of Jade McKissic, promising to do everything they could to find her. However, it quickly became clear to the investigating officers that there was no immediate evidence of foul play, leading the police to begin the standard process of reviewing her last known contacts and last confirmed locations. At the same time, determined to bring attention to her disappearance, friends and classmates canvassed neighborhoods near the campus, posted flyers, and shared messages across social media platforms. Community members joined in, searching parks, streets, and alleyways, hoping for any sign of the missing student. But with each day that passed, without any updates, the fears associated with her disappearance would only seem to intensify, as every unanswered call or unseen message deepened the sense of urgency. Investigators were still compiling information, interviewing friends and associates, and tracing Jade's last known movements, but nothing seemed to explain her sudden absence, leaving everybody in a constant state of distress. However, just as concern began to reach its breaking point, a development would occur that would shatter the hopes of all that were following the case, after a discovery was made that would confirm what many had feared. On Monday the 15th of September, just 1 day after Jade McKissic was officially reported missing, the investigation would take a devastating turn. In the early morning hours, authorities received word of a discovery along Bayou, only a few miles from the University of Houston campus. Though full details were initially withheld by police, it was eventually confirmed that human remains had been located at the scene, and tragically, those remains were soon identified as belonging to Jade McKissic. Following the discovery, the Houston Police Department and the Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences launched a thorough investigation. The area along the bayou was cordoned off as forensic teams worked to document the scene and collect evidence, in order to begin piecing together the events that led to her death. For Jade's friends, classmates, and family, the news was understandably devastating, though some admitted the fear they had felt since her disappearance made the outcome feel, in a haunting way, almost inevitable. The discovery raised immediate questions for those closest to her, as they wondered how someone who was usually so careful had ended up in the bayou. Detectives once again began retracing her last known steps with this new information in mind, reviewing phone records, social media activity, and communications from the days leading up to her disappearance, whilst friends and fellow students offered statements, hoping to shed light on even the smallest details that may have provided some clarity. But despite these efforts, authorities did not release any information regarding potential suspects, motives, or whether foul play was involved, leading many to question whether enough was being done by the police to uncover the truth. In the wake of the discovery, candlelight vigils and memorials were organised across Houston. Friends, family, and community members gathered not only to mourn Jade, but to call attention to the tragedy of her sudden death, and to raise awareness of the larger patterns of missing and endangered individuals in the city. But as heartbreaking as Jade's death was, investigators and the community soon realised that she was far from the only person to end up in Houston's bayous, as in the weeks and months that followed, more bodies would be recovered from waterways across the city, leading many to wonder whether a larger pattern was emerging that authorities had yet to fully uncover. Now, unfortunately, as far as the official investigation goes, this is all we know for now. But despite the lack of movement from law enforcement, Jade's family and friends have never stopped fighting, and they continue to push for answers to this day, sharing memories and urging the public not to let her case slip through the cracks. For a brief period, their efforts seemed to have paid off, as many news outlets began to pick up the story in association with the other bodies that have since been recovered from the bayous of Houston. But as the weeks have passed, no arrests have been made, and police still remain headstrong that no foul play was involved in her death, whilst at the same time refusing to release any alternative conclusions. So, with that, let's get into some of the potential theories. Now, as always, just before we get into the theories themselves, I feel it's important to acknowledge the immense pain and uncertainty that Jade's family have been forced to endure during this difficult period. So, out of respect for them, I will approach these possibilities with as much sensitivity as possible, and I will only be covering ideas that stem from statements made by the family or information released by law enforcement. Also, while some theories may appear more likely than others, we must remember that until concrete evidence emerges, they remain nothing more than speculation. So with this in mind, one of the leading theories in Jade McKissic's disappearance is that she was lured or coerced into a dangerous situation by someone she knew or trusted. This theory emerges from a troubling trend taking shape across Houston, as in recent months, several young adults have disappeared under similar circumstances, only for their bodies to be recovered later in the city's bayous and waterways. Despite active investigations, many of these deaths remain unsolved, and in some cases, the identities of the victims have not yet been publicly confirmed. Now, it's important to mention that authorities have not yet announced any direct connection between these cases, but members of the public have begun questioning whether Houston could be home to an active serial killer, and given the ever-growing list of victims, you can certainly see why. In Jade's case specifically, what makes the situation even more chilling is how close her final location was to where she was last seen. Intensive searches took place in those first few days, yet her remains went undiscovered until 4 days later, leading many to wonder whether crucial opportunities to find her earlier may have been missed. Even now, authorities have not released the exact cause of her death, leaving another painful gap in the story. The idea that has captured the most attention online suggests that there is someone deliberately targeting individuals who seem isolated, unprotected, or overlooked. The similarities are also unsettling. Young adults vanishing suddenly, leaving behind little trace, and later being discovered in or around the city's waterways, with few clues as to how they got there. So for many, these patterns are simply too consistent to ignore. Historically, serial predators have targeted people they believe will not spark immediate panic, such as individuals who are less visible to society or living in situations that make them appear transient. When missing person reports are delayed or investigations begin slowly, patterns like these can continue to go unnoticed until the consequences become impossible to ignore. At the same time, investigators have pointed out that some of these tragedies may be accidental. After all, Houston's bayous are fast-moving, steeply banked, and extremely dangerous, especially at night. So it is possible that some of these individuals simply ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time and unfortunately drowned. In a few cases, there have been no obvious signs of physical trauma, which does align with drowning, but even then, the question remains, why are so many disappearances ending in the same way, in the same type of location, and within such a short time frame? Another explanation is that these deaths stem from separate acts of violence, completely unconnected to each other aside from geography. Houston is a large and complex city with high crime rates, and it's possible that some of these cases may involve isolated disputes or opportunistic attacks, rather than a single offender. But that still leaves the disturbing reality that the bayous have become a recurring final location, a trend that is impossible to ignore. There is also the possibility that the truth lies within a combination of these theories. Some cases may involve foul play, others tragic accidents, and some may be linked to systematic failures that leave certain communities without the attention or rapid response they desperately need. When disappearances are not taken seriously from the start, when families are forced to search on their own, and when resources are stretched thin, predators and dangerous environments are given room to thrive. However, no matter which theory ultimately proves correct, the one thing that remains painfully clear is that Jade McKissic, as well as the many others who have vanished or been found along the bayous, deserve answers. Their families deserve the truth, and ultimately Houston deserves to know whether this is a series of isolated tragedies or something far more dangerous hiding in plain sight. So until authorities are able to provide those answers, for now the city is left questioning how long this has been happening, and more importantly, how many more lives might be at risk if this mystery remains unsolved. Anyway, on that note, I think I'll leave this video here. But as always, if you have any other theories of your own which you think may help explain what really happened to Jade McKissic or any of the other victims mentioned in this video, please leave your ideas in the comments down below and I'll do my best to get back to you. But until next time, thank you so much for watching, and make sure to subscribe to the channel for updates on these stories. Also, if you found this video informative, feel free to check out the playlist on screen now, which covers the many other cases of victims who continue to disappear across America, never to be seen alive again.